The city park buzzed with life. Children laughed as they chased each other across the grass. Joggers moved in steady rhythm along the winding paths, and families lounged under the shade of sprawling oak trees. The warm afternoon sun cast a golden glow over everything, making the day feel alive, vibrant. But Lily felt none of it. She sat alone on a weathered wooden bench near the fountain, her shoulders hunched, her gaze fixed on the ground. The sounds of the park swirled around her, but she was locked in her own quiet world, where invisibility was her only comfort. She hated crowds, hated the way people's eyes felt like they could see through her, judge her. It was easier to disappear, to shrink into the background, to never invite attention. She adjusted the hem of her skirt nervously, smoothing the fabric over her knees. Her mother had insisted she wear something nice today, but the light blue skirt only made her feel more exposed. She wished she had worn jeans. Lily sighed and shifted her gaze to the water, watching the sunlight shimmer on the fountain surface. Then, a sudden movement, a shadow, a presence too close. She barely had time to react before she felt a wet nose press against her leg. A startled gasp escaped her lips. She looked down and froze. A large German shepherd stood before her, its deep brown eyes locked onto her intently. Its ears were perked, its massive frame towering over her seated position. Before she could even think, the dog pushed its snout under the hem of her skirt and lifted it slightly. Lily's entire body went rigid. A wave of hot, mortified panic crashed over her as she yanked the fabric down, scrambling to push the dog away. Oh my God! A few people nearby had already turned, their conversations pausing as they stared. She heard a burst of laughter from a group of teenagers on a nearby bench. Someone whispered, and another snickered. Her face burned with humiliation. "Stop it," she hissed, her voice barely above a whisper, as she pressed her hands firmly over her skirt. The dog didn't back away. Instead, it whimpered. Lily's breath hitched. It wasn't playing. The dog was sniffing, urgently, desperately. Before she could process what was happening, a man's voice cut through the moment. "Rex, heel!" Lily looked up, her chest still heaving with panic. A man in his 40s jogged toward them, his expression tight with concern. He was tall, with graying hair and a strong build, dressed in casual jeans and a dark polo. "Miss, I am so sorry," he said quickly, grabbing hold of the dog's harness. "Rex doesn't usually—" He stopped. His eyes dropped to Lily's legs. Lily, still flustered, followed his gaze. There, just above her knee, was a small swollen area on her skin. She frowned. She had noticed it before, weeks ago, but it never really hurt, so she hadn't thought much of it. The man's face darkened with worry. "Miss," he said again, his voice lower now, serious. "I think something is wrong." "With your leg?" Lily's pulse pounded in her ears. The laughter from the other park-goers faded. The embarrassment drained from her body, replaced by something cold and heavy. Why was the dog so focused on her leg? And why did the man look so afraid? Lily stared at the small, swollen area just above her knee, her fingers hovering over it as if touching it would make the situation more real. Her heart pounded. It had been there for a while, weeks, maybe even months. But it never hurt, never changed. It was just there, until now. The German shepherd Rex let out another urgent whimper, his big brown eyes locked onto her leg as he nudged at it again, whining louder this time. Lily flinched and pulled away, confusion tightening in her chest. The dog's owner, still holding onto the harness, crouched down beside her, his expression serious. "Miss," he said carefully, "I know this seems strange, but you need to get that checked." Lily looked up at him, still overwhelmed from the attention, her cheeks flushed with lingering embarrassment. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man exhaled, his grip tightening on the dog's harness. "Rex isn't just any dog," he explained. "He's a trained medical alert dog." Lily's breath caught. The man continued. "He can detect changes in body chemistry, things people can't sense. He's trained to smell diseases, infections, even some types of cancer. And right now, he hesitated, his gaze flicking between her and Rex. Right now, he's telling me something is wrong. Lily's stomach twisted. She let out a nervous laugh, shaking her head. That's ridiculous, she muttered. I feel fine. Rex let out a sharp. Lily flinched. The dog wasn't playing. He wasn't being silly or intrusive. He was trying to tell her something. She looked back down at her leg, suddenly feeling uneasy. Her fingers brushed over the swollen area again. What if... No, this was crazy. She had no pain, no symptoms. She was fine. But as she sat there, the seriousness in the man's eyes, the way Rex refused to look away from her leg, the way he whined as if he was begging her to listen, it was enough to make her doubt herself. Her throat tightened. What if he's wrong? She whispered. The man gave a small, grim smile. Then you'll leave the doctor's office with peace of mind. He paused. But what if he's right? Lily swallowed hard. The weight of his words settled over her like a heavy blanket. Finally, she took a deep breath. I'll go, she murmured, just to be sure. The man nodded approvingly. Rex wagged his tail once but kept his gaze on her, watching intently as if he wasn't done protecting her yet. An hour later, Lily sat in the sterile white examination room of the doctor's office, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. She felt ridiculous. She wasn't sick. She wasn't. But as the doctor pressed gently around the swelling on her leg, his frown deepened. Her chest tightened. What is it? She asked. The doctor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood up straight, exhaling through his nose. We need to run some tests, he said carefully. I'll need to take a sample. Lily's pulse quickened. A sample? Why? The doctor hesitated for only a second before meeting her eyes. Because this could be something serious. A lump formed in Lily's throat. She barely felt the needle when he took a biopsy. Barely heard her mother's worried voice when the doctor explained that they needed to send it to a lab. Barely registered the sound of her own heart pounding in her ears. This wasn't supposed to happen. It was just a stupid dog being nosy. That's what she had told herself. But as she sat there staring at the wall, the reality hit her like a truck. What if Rex had just saved her life? 2 days later, the doctor called with the results. Lily's parents sat on either side of her as the doctor took a deep breath and said the words that made the world tilt beneath her feet. Lily, you have a developing tumor in your leg. Her mother gasped. Her father went still. Lily felt like the air had been stolen from her lungs. But then, through the panic, through the fear, the doctor's voice softened. You're lucky. Lily's eyes darted up to meet his. If we caught this later, it would have been much worse. But we caught it early, and that gives us a chance to stop it before it spreads. Lucky. She was lucky. But deep down she knew. Luck had nothing to do with it. Somehow Rex knew before anyone else. The hospital room was cold, sterile, and far too quiet. The steady beep of the heart monitor and the distant murmur of nurses in the hallway were the only sounds filling the space. Lily lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her body weak and heavy from the surgery. It had been 2 days since the doctors removed the tumor from her leg. 2 days of exhaustion, discomfort, and a gnawing fear she couldn't shake. She should have felt relieved. The surgery had been successful. The doctors said they had caught it early enough. She had been given a second chance. But all Lily felt was uncertainty. What if it came back? What if she never felt like herself again? She turned her head toward the window, watching the sun sink behind the buildings. She felt trapped in this bed, trapped in this fear that wouldn't go away. A soft knock at the door broke her thoughts. Her mother perked up from the chair beside her. "Come in," she said softly. The door swung open, and Lily's stomach tightened as she saw who stood there. Rex. The large German shepherd padded carefully into the room, his deep brown eyes locking onto Lily as if he had been waiting to see her. His owner, The man from the park stood beside him with a small smile. "Hey there, kiddo," he said gently. "We thought we'd stop by." Lily stiffened. She still remembered that day at the park, the embarrassment, the laughter, the humiliation of having everyone's eyes on her. She swallowed hard and looked away. "You didn't have to," she murmured. There was a pause. Then, the softest pressure against her leg. She glanced down. Rex had stepped closer, resting his large head on the blanket over her lap. His deep brown eyes met hers, full of something she didn't expect. Not excitement, not playfulness. Understanding. Lily swallowed, her throat tightening. It was almost as if he knew what she was feeling, like he could sense the fear that had settled deep in her bones. Like he was saying, "It's okay, I'm here." A lump formed in her throat. She had spent days pushing away what had happened, convincing herself that Rex had just been some nosy dog, that his insistence at the park had been an accident. But it hadn't been. He wasn't trying to embarrass her that day. He was trying to save her. Her fingers trembled as she reached out, hesitating for only a moment before gently running them over Rex's fur. He let out a soft huff, his tail wagging just once. Lily blinked back sudden tears. "Thank you," she whispered. The man chuckled. "I think he already knows." From that day on, Rex came every day. He curled up beside her bed, keeping watch. When she was too tired to talk, he just sat with her. When she felt scared, he nudged her hand until she pet him. For the first time since the surgery, Lily didn't feel so alone. And for the first time in a long time, she believed. Maybe everything was going to be okay. The hospital was behind her now. The surgery was behind her. The worst was supposed to be behind her. But as Lily walked through the familiar paths of the park, a cool breeze rustling the autumn leaves, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. Physically, she was healing. The doctors had cleared her, telling her she was lucky they caught it early. "You're going to be just fine," they had said. But they didn't know the thoughts that kept her awake at night. What if it comes back? What if I'm not really okay? She wanted to believe that she was safe, that she could breathe again. But a part of her felt like she was waiting for something, waiting for the ground to drop out from under her again. She took a deep breath, stuffing her hands into the pockets of her jacket as she glanced down at Rex, walking beside her. Even after leaving the hospital, she had kept in touch with Rex and his owner. They met often, usually at the park where it all began. Rex's presence made her feel anchored, like everything was a little more okay when he was around. Today was no different. The German shepherd padded alongside her, his ears perked, his tail wagging lightly as he took in every sound, every movement. Lily let out a small sigh. "I guess I'm just being paranoid," she muttered. Rex huffed in response. Lily smirked. "What, you think I should stop worrying?" She didn't expect an answer, of course, but Rex had other plans. One second she was stepping toward the curb to cross the street. The next, Rex lunged in front of her, cutting her off. "Rex?" Lily barely had time to react before a car tore through the intersection, running a red light at full speed. The rush of wind whipped past her face. Lily's stomach plummeted. If Rex hadn't stopped her, she would have stepped right into its path. She couldn't breathe. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she stumbled backward, her legs shaking. Rex stood in front of her, his stance firm, his eyes locked on her. His ears flicked forward, as if making sure she was okay. Lily's breath came in short gasps. Her mind replayed the moment over and over. What would have happened if Rex hadn't been there? Tears blurred her vision. Slowly she sank to her knees on the pavement, reaching out with trembling hands. Rex immediately pressed his head against her chest. Lily let out a shaky sob, wrapping her arms around him. "You saved me," she whispered, again. Rex let out a quiet whimper as if telling her, "Of course I did." Lily squeezed her eyes shut. This wasn't a coincidence. Rex had been meant to be in her life, not just once, not just at the park, not just at the hospital, but always. Lily never thought she would find herself here, standing at the front of a crowded room, a microphone in her trembling hands, dozens of eyes watching her expectantly. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Public speaking. It had always been one of her worst fears. For years she had been the quiet girl, the one who never raised her hand in class, who avoided attention at all costs. But today she was here for a reason. She gripped the microphone tighter, swallowing hard. Then she glanced down. Rex sat beside her. The German shepherd lay calmly at her feet. His ears perked, his deep brown eyes locked onto hers. His presence, as steady as ever, was her anchor. Just like he had been in the park, just like he had been in the hospital, just like he had been when he saved her life. Lily took a deep breath, forcing herself to push through the fear. She thought back to the moment she had made this decision. The day she walked into the local service dog training center, determined to give back. Rex had changed her life. Now she wanted to help dogs like him change others' lives too. At first she had stuck to quiet tasks, feeding the dogs, helping with training sessions. But then one of the trainers had approached her. "You have an incredible story, Lily. You should share it." She had hesitated. Speaking in front of people? No, that wasn't her. But then she had thought about Rex, about how he had saved her. Twice. About how he had given her the courage to fight, to believe in herself again. And she realized maybe it was time to be brave for him too. So now, she stood here, terrified. But she wasn't alone. She took one last deep breath, her fingers brushing over Rex's soft fur. And then, she began to speak. At first, her voice shook. She stumbled over her words, her palms sweating. But then, she looked down at Rex again. He was watching her, calm and steady, as if he knew she could do this. And for the first time, she believed it too. Her voice grew stronger. She told them about the park, about the moment of humiliation that turned into a miracle, about the fear, the diagnosis, the surgery, how Rex had been there through it all. And then, she told them about the moment he saved her a second time. The crowd was silent, hanging on to every word. By the time she finished, tears shone in the eyes of many. She exhaled shakily, finally lowering the microphone. And then, applause. Loud, overwhelming applause. Lily blinked in shock, her chest tightening. Not with fear, but with something new. Pride. He wagged his tail, as if to say, "I knew you could do it." And for the first time in her life, Lily wasn't afraid anymore. The auditorium buzzed with excitement, the air filled with the sounds of laughter, applause, and the occasional happy bark from the many dogs in attendance. Large banners hung from the walls, each one celebrating the incredible bond between humans and service dogs. Lily stood backstage, smoothing out the front of her dress with slightly trembling hands. Not from fear, not anymore, from anticipation. It had been months since that first speech, the one that had changed everything for her. Since then, she had fully stepped into her new life, volunteering at the service dog training center, working with new handlers, and sharing her story whenever she could. She had become someone she never thought she could be. Someone strong, confident, brave, and now she was standing at the biggest event of the year, a ceremony honoring the heroes with 4 paws. Her eyes drifted down to Rex, sitting proudly by her side, his tail thumping against the floor. Around his neck, he wore a brand new collar, one that held a shining Medal of Honor awarded for his extraordinary instinct and life-saving actions. Lily smiled, kneeling beside him, scratching gently behind his ears. "You ready, boy?" she whispered. Rex licked her hand in response. She laughed softly, then stood tall as the announcer called her name. With Rex at her side, Lily stepped onto the stage, blinking against the bright lights as the applause greeted her. She took her place at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, some strangers, some people who had become family. Then she took a deep breath and began to tell their story. She told them about a moment of embarrassment that turned into a miracle, about a diagnosis she never saw coming, about a dog who refused to give up on her, even when she was ready to give up on herself. As she spoke, she saw people wiping tears, nodding, connecting with every word, and when she finished, the entire room rose to their feet. Thunderous applause, a standing ovation. Lily let out a shaky breath, emotion swelling in her chest. She looked down at Rex, blinking back tears as she knelt beside him, cupping his furry face in her hands. "You changed everything for me," she whispered. Rex wagged his tail, then let out a single joyful bark, as if to say, "I always believed in you." And as Lily stood, hand over her heart, surrounded by the warmth of people who finally saw her for who she truly was, she realized, sometimes, the moments that embarrass us the most lead to the greatest miracles, and sometimes, the truest friendships come in the most unexpected ways. And so, what started as an embarrassing moment in the park became the moment that saved Lily's life. Rex wasn't just a dog. He was a hero, a guardian, and a true friend. He gave Lily more than just protection. He gave her courage, purpose, and a second chance. This story proves that sometimes the most unexpected friendships lead to the greatest miracles. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Amazing Paws Stories. We bring you the most heartwarming, inspiring, and emotional animal stories. Because sometimes a furry friend is all it takes to change a life forever. Stay tuned for more incredible stories that prove the unbreakable bond between humans and animals.